Our guest speaker. Kari Utterback is a graduate of Missouri State University, and after she graduated in 2007, she promptly came to Columbia, where she became involved with our government, city government. She's now working for the City of Columbia as an administrative supervisor and has been the lead facilitator for their equity and inclusion training program since 2015. She has been integral in implementing a community-wide framework to look at how individuals can work to interrupt their biases and understand their privilege. We're pleased that she won the Columbia Values Diversity Award in 2019 as recognition for her efforts. A little bit about her personal life. She tells us she has one husband, two dogs, a small business, severe anxiety, I'm not so sure about that, and a very large family support system that helps her to keep everything manageable. So we are just delighted that Kari is here to tell us the best ways we can be inclusive every day. Thank you, Kari.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
You mentioned the library and my heart was like all aflutter. I love our library so much and I've been missing it. So yes. I can't see the participants. I can only see the panelists. So we are going to do a couple of things. I am going to ask some questions and I'll have you use the chat feature on the right-hand side, and you can just type in what you believe the answer is. If you don't know how to chat, if you hover kind of in the black screen, your menu at the bottom will pop up and one of your options should be chat. You can also press Alt-H and that will open the chat feature. And then I'm gonna be sharing my screen with you. And I will go back and forth, hopefully between, if all things work as they should, between me and the presentation, and I'm happy to send you the presentation afterwards as well. Okay, so inclusion every day. I got this idea from an event I was at that Nikki Magruder was putting on. One of her presenters was Amber Cheek, and she just said, inclusion can happen 100 times a day in 100 different ways, and that really stuck with me, and it has allowed me to kind of think of everyone as a an inclusion superhero, if you will. So I am excited to just talk through what that could look like and what it has looked like here at the city. So I'm going to start out by asking a few questions. Okay. So I just want to define like what we're talking about before we delve in. And I think that sometimes the words diversity, equity, and inclusion get conflated and they begin to meld all together. And sometimes we think that they all mean the same thing when that's not exactly true. I think language has a lot of power, and so I want to differentiate these things, and I would just love it if you all would type in the comments what you think diversity is, what you think equity is, and what you think inclusion is. If you think those are all the same thing, then you can write that too. But I want to give just a few moments for everyone to kind of get their answers in. Is is everyone, oh, there we go. Yes, perfect. Thank you, Barbara. Carol, perfect. I think you guys have this figured out. So diversity equals variety, diversity having many points of view, diversity is the quality of being made of many different entities, diversity equals difference, equity is being treated fairly, and inclusion is being included in the decision. Equity equals equal, inclusion equals allowing everyone to participate. Diversity to me means people of divergent races and colors, ethnicities, as well as sexual preferences. Equity is the equalization of opportunity. Inclusivity is allowing different groups to participate. Inclusion is welcoming and affirmation of all. I love all of these answers. I love all of them. Thank you so much, you all. Whoops, so let me get, dang it. Let me get back to my screen. Okay, so the way that I'm going to use these today is that diversity is difference. So different races, different ethnicities, different languages, different ages, different genders, different sexual orientation, different religion, age, all of the things, all of the ways that we are different. That is when I say diversity, that is what I'm getting at. Equity is being kind of impartially equal, everyone getting the, and then inclusion being the act of including everyone by giving them the tools that they need to thrive and giving their voice the same weight and appreciating our differences. And then one step further for me is belonging, which is like an acceptance as a member. And if you are a member, then you have not only equal rights, but you are protected equally. We will all go to battle for you. We will all believe you, all of those things. And a sense of belonging is a human need, a lot like other human needs. Food, shelter, clothing, that connection is really important because it is one of those human factors. So, like I was saying, I got this from an event, and I think that it helps me to remember that if I feel like I missed something, I missed an opportunity, I can get the next one, but also I can go back and say, hey, I noticed that you said this in the meeting, and I think that, you know, I was feeling a little bit targeted because of this life experience. And so you can, it allows me to have grace with myself, I guess is where I'm coming from. So that's a little bit about that. We know that diversity and inclusion can affect teamwork super positively. It leads to increased innovation, increased creativity, increased productivity. It's I don't want to say it's magical, but it does, if there's a sense of belonging and a sense of inclusion that comes along with the diversity, it can mean amazing things can happen for your company or your team or your family. There's a lot of different data on the benefits of diversity and inclusion. They, however, rarely happen organically. They almost always have to happen intentionally. So I think that even for me, who does equity work all the time, it's sometimes, easy to skip over an opportunity to be inclusive when, you know, in the course of the day, you're working on budgets and supervisory activities and all of the things that come with, you know, purchase orders and all of the great things that I get to do. It is very easy for me to forget. So I have to be really intentional and remind myself all the time that there's more ways that we can be inclusive. So also, I just want to say that even though it's easy for me to skip over those things throughout the day, like, that doesn't mean that it's less important for me to accommodations or less important for me to listen for the opportunities to be inclusive. I think for me, that usually points out where I have privilege, when I don't have to think about something and I don't feel targeted in certain ways, then it's not something that comes across my mind. And we're gonna get a little bit into that in just a few minutes when I ask you to think about your identities and yourself. But first, I would kind of like to give you I would like to do an activity where I give you just an idea of 100 times a day, 100 different ways. So if you wouldn't mind to just close your eyes, take a couple deep breaths, and I want you to think about a place that you are at a lot or a place that you love. This could be on campus, downtown, your workplace, the place that you volunteer. So I want you to close your eyes and take a few breaths and then think about that place. And I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I want you to just mentally think about this place and if those things are available. So with your eyes closed, I want you to think about if that place has somewhere that people can go smoke that isn't a bathroom. And do you know where that place is? Do you have somewhere people can pray twice a day that isn't a bathroom? And do you know where that place is? Do you have somewhere people can breastfeed or pump that isn't a bathroom? Do you have somewhere gender neutral folks can feel comfortable using a bathroom? Do you have somewhere families can feel comfortable using a bathroom? Have you had potlucks where the only protein options are pork? When there is food provided, do you have vegan options? What about peanut-free or gluten-free or sugar-free options? And are those labeled? You probably have an ADA compliant bathroom, but what about the bathroom door? Is it on a push button opening? Is it heavy and hard to open? Are there changing tables in all the bathrooms? Are there any adult-sized changing tables? If the snowplow pushes the snow pile onto the sidewalk, is there an accommodation plan? Just think about that space just for one more minute and think about if you are comfortable there. And who might not be. Okay, so I'm gonna go back. Did anyone get all of the all of the things checked off, like, yep, we have that, we have that. You can chat me in the comments if you feel like you got an A+. When I have done this in the past, it's not always everyone in the room gets an A+. So that's just a few examples of the ways that inclusion can happen in so many ways. We know that people bring all of their identities with them all the time. Everyone encompasses identities in class, race, age, religion, sex, gender, sexual orientation, appearance, ethnicity, familial status, education status, and so much more. And we want folks to feel comfortable. They want to belong, and we want to make that happen. So part of that comes from, are people comfortable enough to tell you that they need an accommodation? Would you be able to listen openly? Are you comfortable enough to talk about inclusion with your boss or your mentor or your advisor? And then a lot of it comes back to being vulnerable. Like, are you willing to be a little bit vulnerable with the people that you work with or that you volunteer with or your friends, to say, hey, I noticed this thing and I think we could do better, which is it can be a very scary place to be. So the city is using that identity with our Building Inclusive Communities workshop. With that workshop, it's like well, in the past, it's been a 7-hour in-person workshop. That will likely change going forward. But the first activity we do is an identity chart. And so I hope that you brought some pens and paper. I would love it if you could get that now. And we together are gonna do this activity. I think it can be eye-opening. It was for me because I had never written down certain things about myself and really thought through how I felt about those identities. So I want to show you some things that we can put on our identity charts, but it can be absolutely anything. And we're not going to think about how we feel about those words or labels right now. We're just going to write down a few things. I am going to set a timer. And I would love it if you could write down as many things as you can think of in, let's say, 2 minutes. And I am going to share my screen to help get a list of ideas. So, yes, we have an endless possibility of identities. So I'm going to start the timer and give you 2 minutes to kind of figure out where you might fit or what the language might be for you in your identity chart. And then after this, I will show you mine. So. About 30 seconds left to wrap it up. Okay, that's time. I would encourage you to spend more than 2 minutes on this activity, but that's what we have for the second, and I think it should work for this example. So let me share mine. So this is one that I did last year, probably, and now I can easily add 10 more to this if I wanted. This, while it does encompass a lot of me, it's not everything. And some of these labels are, I put more energy into. So some of them I put less energy into. So I don't put a lot of emotional energy into being cisgender. I just don't. It's not something that I have to put emotional energy into. So since I was born with female anatomy and I identify now as a woman, that means that I'm cisgender. So it's the opposite of transgender. And so since I have a lot of privilege there, it's not something that I have to think about. No one's ever asked me any questions about being a lady in that way. What I do have to put a lot of emotional energy into is being a woman with anxiety, being a diabetic woman with anxiety. Like, those are things that I have to put a lot of emotional energy into. And since I put a lot of emotional energy into being a woman and supporting other women, it's something that I'm very proud of. There are other things I'm much less proud of, right? Like, I am not necessarily super proud that I'm loud or that I like to crochet. Like, those aren't something that like bring me a lot of pride and joy. So some of your things may be more important to you than other things. And that could be completely different from someone who identifies the same way. So me and my family, we are a blended family, and I love my giant family. Love it. That is not everyone's story. I know other folks who did not have a good life experience with their blended family. So mine is great, and it was good for me, but it wasn't good for everyone. So I think recognizing that, recognizing your own lived experience and, you know, your own emotional energy that goes into that can be really eye-opening in recognizing other human experiences. So we use this activity to kind of get started on separating certain social identities. So I want to just kind of give you an idea of what a social identity is. And it's really just a person's sense of who they are based on group membership. Oftentimes there's privilege or oppression assigned to these, and folks hold varying degrees of importance to those social identities, like we were talking about. So I think I said earlier, we are all our identities all the time. So that's kind of the idea of intersectionality, is that we're not just one thing. We carry our identities and our lived experiences based on those intersections with us throughout our life. So I can't just show up as a lady. I can't just show up as a white person. I have to show up as a 30-something hetero white lady who has anxiety and diabetes, but also 2 really cute dogs and a giant garden. You know, like, I have to show up as those things all the time. And the sense of belonging that I get here at the city comes from the culture here at the health department being one where I can show up as my full self, but that I am expected to show up as my full self too. And that everyone appreciates when folks show up as their whole selves, as their wholehearted selves. So, and I've been encouraged to have my own staff show up as their wholehearted selves here at the health department. So I think it's pretty top down here. And I think that that has been integral in setting up our diversity and equity program here. We began doing that through a savings program we had here at the city, and our director sent a few people through NCCJ to be trained, and we kind of let that snowball. So now we have, I think, 9 facilitators and 1 going through right now. And there are other organizations that have done similar paths. We got the idea from Columbia Public Schools. They have so many facilitators and have made it mandatory for first, second, third year teachers to go through a Building Inclusive Communities training. Shelter Insurance has quite a few facilitators. MU has quite a few facilitators. Columbia College has one, I know, but there's many people here in town who have been through the facilitation certification process and are doing the work within the business community. I also would love to give a shout out to Inclusive Impact Institute. They also are working with businesses on the Inclusive Excellence for Businesses journey. They are able to do amazing things, and it's completely scalable to any organization. They are working with business leaders. They have kind of a cohort that goes through once a year, and they are able to they're able to use company data to see where improvements can be made, and then collect data over time to see how those improvements have changed your organization. And so it's kind of amazing. And Nikki Magruder is fabulous, and she not only leads this program, but also the Journey Towards Inclusive Excellence, which is a program for individuals here in our community. And we have a passport that some of you might have gotten. We've had to change a lot of our programming due to COVID-19 and safe social distancing. And we are excited about announcing the 2020 State of Inclusivity Conference. That will likely be remote and digital. And so we are excited to have that on August 6th. And we are hopefully going to be announcing a keynote speaker in the next few weeks. So look for that. We are on Facebook, and you can always reach Nikki about the inclusive business journey at Inclusive Impact Institute. They have a delightful website. So I think I had a slide back here. Yes, so we are all more than we seem at first glance, but like I said, that inclusion can happen a lot of different ways in a lot of different times, and it often starts with a vulnerable conversation and a willingness to listen. So let me exit out of my share screen, and I think I would love to answer any questions. You can put them in the chat, or there's a little Q&A button down in your bottom menu, and you can use that. I'm just noticing we got some more answers. Diversity is different elements, equity is all access, and inclusion is everyone at the table. And then Meredith is talking about limiting space. Yeah, we run into the same thing when we are talking inclusion at the city. Space and budget is always the two considerations. But we've recently, I'll tell you one, we have multiple gender neutral bathrooms, but they're not the first bathrooms that you come to here at the health department. So not that we're hiding them, they just aren't the first ones that you see. So we put signs on the bathroom doors that just say, we have gender neutral bathrooms. If you go down the hall, first door on the left, you will find a gender neutral bathroom, to make sure that everyone feels like they can go to the bathroom here in this very public building, in this taxpayer owned building. So again, I would love to answer any questions via chat or Q&A. Okay, thank you, Dick. So he's saying that there's been some comment on economic diversity. And with economic diversity, I'm going to use economic class as the term, and we have so much data on economic class and health outcomes, and we are trying to push that data out. And I know that we are a country where it seems that the American dream, at least the way that I understand the American dream, is that if you work hard, you will succeed and you will make enough money to retire at a not super old age. And the American dream is different for everyone. I would say that that is not my lived experience. I worked in social services for 6.5 years as a social service specialist and a case manager, and we're just not, we don't all have the same starting place. Some people get to start at third base, and some people don't even get to see the game. So I don't have a good answer for economic class. I do know that we have quite a lot of folks here in the community doing work on this, and it affects all aspects of life. So we can think about not only health disparities, but we can think about the social justice system, the criminal justice system. We could think about access. We could think about education. We could think about the legal system, all of those things and how interconnected they are, and how when they intersect with other oppressions, we compound the situation. So I didn't see a question about that. I just got a kind of a comment. So, and then I'm getting another question about an adult changing table. And yes, there are some facilities with adult changing tables. There is an organization here in town that is working on putting adult changing tables in different areas. It was started by a mom who has, I want to say a 6-year-old now, who needs a changing table, and a toddler changing table just isn't big enough. And so they are an organization, I'm looking it up, that is helping folks understand the need. It's called MODE, M-O-D-E, and it is for accessible restrooms, but it's Missouri Disability Empowerment. And they're helping folks with that. Okay. Is there any other questions on economic diversity, or any other questions on anything? I think because I don't know that I'm seeing all the comments, I guess, is where I'm at. Okay, Meredith, go ahead. Do you provide inclusivity training for all the departments, for example, the police department? Yes. So it's open to all city and county employees, and any one who sits on a city board or commission, and the county commission. So yes, our training is offered to anyone that is a city or a city partner who is interested and willing. And one thing further, we have, I think all of the lieutenants have been through Building Inclusive Communities. I'm reading a question from Meredith, thank you. The people who are not comfortable in social spaces and with who they are because of implicit bias. What about others? Okay. Okay, so thank you for all these questions. These are really, really great. So Meredith, asking about people who are not comfortable in social spaces because of our implicit bias. And so I would say that is accurate. That's really accurate. Like, there are certain spaces where folks do not feel comfortable or safe. And I think the way that we work on that is to have vulnerable conversations with people who are willing to listen. And then work on the systems that make it make that possible. So let's, work on very specific, intentional ways that we can lift the people up who need it. Yes, I gave you one exercise on just identifying yourself, and I would encourage you to think about the emotional energy that you put into all of those tags that you wrote down. And I would encourage you to keep thinking about that list. As I think about it, I think about other things I could add and other things that mentally take up my energy and my time that are not on my list. I have a question about someone inspecting government buildings for inclusivity. We have worked with our building maintenance staff and our legal staff, and they have been ensuring that we have as many gender neutral, family friendly restrooms available to the entire public as we can. I will say that every time I have brought something to a city supervisor and said, hey, I think we could be more inclusive by doing this, they have been willing to listen. So if you see something, say something. We love hearing from you, from the public, when it's important to you and it's something that you think you need and you think that we could do better. Like, we at the health department, we really like hearing that, but that's been my experience also with Parks and Rec and legal and other entities that I've worked with here at the city. We do have the passports. This is the 2020 passport. We started it in January at the Columbia Valley's Diversity Breakfast. This is our third year of this initiative, and it has experiences for hopefully almost every identity that we could think of. And we have these available at the front desk at the health department. You can get my contact information at the end of the presentation, and I'm happy to mail you one if you send me an email. We have some steps in here. We really love when folks can go take the implicit association tests. Thank you for mentioning those, Meredith. So the first step, I think, is to take the implicit association test, and we even have a place where you can score them. We recommend you take one where you think you don't have any bias. And remember, I took one on women, and apparently I have a bias. And I was like, that can't be right. So I took it again, and same results. So then I started taking them and recognizing where I needed to work on myself. And the implicit association test is like rapid fire. So it measures like your very first kind of cognitive thought before you have time to fix it, right? So we all, through our lived experience, have this one kind of initial thought, but then through other experiences, we back off that thought and then filter it through a different lens sometimes. And so the implicit association test is kind of able to figure out that very first thought we have. So that is through Harvard. It is implicit.harvard.edu. And that takes you to the IAT. And then we also recommend that you attend the cycle of socialization experience. That is something that I have been charged with and been able to facilitate. And it is done with two people, one in a privileged identity, and then one person of the same identity in a targeted identity, or in an identity where they experience oppression. And so we are working on what that looks like remotely, because it's a very vulnerable conversation, and oftentimes it's emotional, and I'm not sure how to give the same emotional support, and I'm not sure it will have the same effect. So I'm working on what that looks like. But if you have any interest, Bobby Harrow is the one who kind of coined the term cycle of socialization, and there is examples out there in their writing. There's tons of examples. So I would recommend that you look that up until I can figure out how to do the cycle of socialization via Zoom. Yes, let me make sure I got this person's name right. Meredith, yes. They said we can easily forget others' discomforts when we are comfortable or privileged, and that is spot on. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. Winifred is asking, how many hours does the training involve? So usually the first training that we do is like 7 hours, and then after that we have a bunch of follow-up trainings that are anywhere between 2 to 4 hours, and really delve deep on certain identities. We have focused on the next 2 classes being about an hour or a little more on things that we feel like we can do the activities digitally. And so I think those will be ally is a verb and talking through tough stuff. I think those are the next 2 that we'll likely try to do. We have had classes for the last 2 months be canceled or postponed until we figure out how we can change the curriculum to do it safely. Okay. Previously held conversations with 10 to 15 people on a topic. Okay, so yes, so the cycle of socialization really includes lived experiences and how those affect our day-to-day life, unless we really work to kind of unpack those experiences and figure out why we're doing what we're doing. And once we unpack those, then we get to move on to the cycle of liberation. And Harrow's work on this is extraordinary. If you would like to do research, we use different identities to do the cycles of socialization. So we do them on race, is the most frequent one that we do, but we also do them on economic class, sex assigned at birth. I've done one with Sarah Perry on ability. So I will try to figure out how to do that remotely. It may be some sort of like private Zoom where you enter a password or something, and then we figure out how everyone can speak at the same time. I'm not sure what that looks like yet. So for the city, since I am bound by a non-compete with NCCJ, I am allowed to train anyone who's a city employee or a partner of the city or on a city board or commission, and the county, since we're a joint city county department. So those same folks at the county. Or the other folks I'm able to train is if your organization is interested in potentially sending folks through NCCJ to the facilitator certification process, we invite you to a Building Inclusive Communities workshop so that you can kind of see what you might be getting into before you sign up for that. So I will post anything that I do through the Journey Towards Inclusive Excellence, which is open to the whole county. It's open to the whole world, but we've mainly focused Boone County, on our Facebook page. And that's Journey Towards Inclusive Excellence on Facebook. And I am happy to share my screen again so that you can get my contact information and you can ask me about any other trainings that you're interested in or that you would like to sign up for. Okay. Marilyn, was there anything else that you wanted to know or that you wanted to say?
Hang on. Here I am. Well, we're about out of time, but thank you so much. This is good information for us to start thinking about this. And I'm also glad to hear you'll be able to continue even in these interesting times with some of your programs, and people can join in. So thank you for the information you have shared. We are really appreciative.
Of course.
Here's a message from Meredith saying she could give a testimonial. She's attended a number of sessions. So,
awesome.
Yeah. So thank you so much. And thanks to everyone for listening in and watching. I think this worked really well. Let you know that tonight we are going to have a candidate forum for the First Ward City Council at 7, same location.